Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, June 6th Rules Committee meeting. Councilmember Braithwaite chairing. We do have a quorum. First up, we have public comment. We'll start with those online and then go to the residents that are here in person. The first member we have, and you have 3 minutes, is...
I have Evie Russell.
Ms. Russell, are you with us this evening? Ms. Russell going once. Ms. Russell going twice. We'll come back to her if we have time. Next we have...
I have Mr. Vasilko.
I believe he's here in person. Mr. Vasilko, you have 3 minutes. Can you please state your name for the public?
Mike Vasilko, 6th Ward. First, Peter, thank you very much for bringing the matter of discussing alternate types of government to this Rules Committee. I personally appreciate that very much. I'd like to speak to that. The discussion about alternative types of government is, in my opinion, a very timely discussion, considering we've had nothing but trouble trying to get hire a new city manager. I think the city manager type of government has failed Evanston citizens and taxpayers. I began paying attention to the higher taxes, the tax and spend attitude, and what I saw as corruption, starting with the era of city manager Bobkowitz right through to this present day. Even to this day, citizens and voters have no say in the hiring or firing of the city manager and his or her appointees. For all practical purposes, the city manager is untouchable. During the Bobkowitz era, the culture of corruption took root. It became okay for city staff members and administrators to regularly come to this podium, mislead the public, and mislead the public was even sanctioned, especially when the lies and the distortions led to the vote desired. So I think it's time for a change, personally. I'm in favor of the strong mayor form of government with the city council, of course, and with an assistant to the mayor for managing city affairs. That allows us as citizens to have the flexibility, have accountability, and the ability to hire and fire, especially when it comes to the mayor and the aldermen who serve on the council. So I strongly recommend, and again, I'm grateful. I hope it's a genuine discussion. I hope it's people have open minds about it. Me personally, it couldn't be, it was a surprise to me to see it on the agenda. And again, Peter, I'm very grateful to you for whatever reason you had to bring it forward. I also wanted to speak briefly to the...
15 seconds, Mike.
That's all I need for the Finance and Budget Committee. Also long overdue is to set up the changing of the chairman for that committee. All due respects to Alderman Wynn, but 6 months came and gone, and seems like she refused to step aside for somebody else to take the chairmanship.
Mr. Vasilko, your time is up. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. By the way, the minutes of that first meeting where it was said were never publicized.
Thank you. Next up, we have...
We have Mary Rosinski.
Ms. Rosinski, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, Mary Rosinski. I'm glad to see we are discussing the city manager and official misconduct. I would hope that in the discussion on the official misconduct that goes deep into also, between council member to council member and staff to council member and council member to staff, so that it applies evenly throughout all of our city administration. I think that one of the things that, and I just got the tail end of what Mr. Vasilka was saying, but I have felt that there has been a disrespect for residents too. So I think as we're talking about culture in our city, it starts at the top down. And I would really like us to have serious consideration on how that happens. I have found that coming into this building has been very unfriendly, even to the point that we can't even go up to the city manager's office. And there's no one on the first floor that's there. There's a message. I don't know, you look a little puzzled, but there's a sign up there that says only staff. Whereas before, when even Wally was here, at least we could go up and make an appointment, talk to his secretary, get some information if we needed to. So this wall between the administration and the residents needs to come down. The second thing is I'm really grateful also to see a discussion on our mayoral form of government or city manager form of government, because as we've seen in the last 10 years, there's no one to take accountability for final decisions, contracts, and things like that. When we go to the city manager, you guys don't want to take control and say, well, that's not our job. And then the city manager makes decisions, they say, well, council approved it. And the residents are left holding a tax bill. So I want, for example, Mayor Biss, when something comes up, ultimately the buck stops with you. And we can still have a very strong, qualified, experienced city manager. And it doesn't mean we can't have a strong mayor. Just like in my business, we have strong regionals and we have strong managers, but ultimately it stops at the top. And that's what I feel like as a resident I want here. I'm tired of talk to this person, no one's accountable for anything. So this ultimately comes down to accountability. So I just hope that discussion, and I think it is time for a referendum, but only after the people have had, and everyone's put on pros and cons of both forms of government and given examples of pros and cons, because it's not like a strong mayor is going to be corrupt.
You have 15 seconds,
Okay, I don't need any
Brzezinski.
more time, but I don't think we should assume it's going to be wrong. Lots of cities up and down and lots of villages do run with a strong elected official, and the regular people do stay there because the residents have respect for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Our last speaker for the event, unless there's someone who hasn't signed up who's in the audience, is Ray Friedman. Mr. Friedman, you have 3 minutes.
It's amazing that we only have 3 minutes and there's 45 minutes of public speaking and 3 of us speaking. That would be 15 minutes apiece, but you're cutting us off at 3 minutes.
You now have
So,
2:49.
here goes.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Getting very tired of making public comment with no feedback. Once again, we need to point out that public comment is supposed to create a dialogue. We have some very serious issues here and very little involvement with the residents. We need to be part of the discussions, the process, and the resolutions. You have worked very hard to keep the residents out of these processes and decisions. What happened to the transparency and accountability we were promised? Why would you think it would be appropriate to have executive session before a council meeting, leaving residents waiting for 1, 2, or 3 hours? Why would you think it would be appropriate to have a TIF hearing before a council meeting so that there's no time to finish that TIF hearing, which is required by law? Is this how you want to treat your residents? I thought the government was created of the people, by the people, and for the people. That does not seem to be the case here. There is an ordinance for public comment that was submitted to all of you that could and should be put to good use. Can you approve that ordinance now? We are looking really bad here. No permanent city manager, no permanent police chief, budget increase of 60 to 70 million over last year, plus approval of 10 million in general obligation bonds within 2 weeks of the new year, plus 43 million in ARPA funds. Hiring new positions are out of control with new studies, new consultants, sexual harassment on the lakefront. We have some serious issues here. How and when do you plan on resolving all these issues? And when and how do you plan on involving the residents with the discussions, the process, and the resolutions to each and every one of these issues? Sincerely, Ray Friedman, 2nd Ward. And P.S., after I finished writing this today, ready to leave the computer, I got an email from Evanston Patch saying that there was a secret $225,000 sex abuse settlement that was never approved by ETHS board. Sad. Very sad.
Thank you, Mr. Friedman. Seeing no further comments, we'll jump into the agenda. And just as a point of information for anyone watching this meeting, as a reminder, public comment is exactly that. It's something that we do typically at the top of every committee meeting. It's our opportunity to listen directly to our residents or anyone who signs up. As a part of that public comment practice, we do not respond to any public comments. I also remind our members of the community and any other stakeholder that there are multiple ways to communicate to our city council, which includes email, text messages, as well as phone calls. All right, let's jump into the agenda and get as much accomplished as we can. First up, we have approval of the Rules Committee meeting. We have Rules meeting through July 7th, as well as April 4th. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. If anyone doesn't have any comments or edits, we'll
Just to
say-
confirm, it's July 7th, 2021 that we're approving here.
Like,
And April 4th, 2022.
thank you for that correction. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes have been approved. Next up, we have Resolution R1, which is 39-R22, instructing the city clerk to submit the November 8th ballot. The referendum used ranked choice voting. This was submitted by Councilmember Harry Carres. Recommends adoption of the resolution. That's a move. Do you second, and then I'll recognize you? Second. It's been properly moved and seconded. Do you want to speak to this, sir?
Sure. I brought this forth to the council. Personally, when I took this position, I wanted to support progressive ideas, and ranked choice voting is an idea that I think promotes good democracy. So personally, I feel like in the voting process, a lot of times, especially in like national elections, people tend to vote strategically or hold their nose and vote for the lesser of three evils. With ranked choice voting, people can vote for their favorite, regardless of whether or not they think they're going to win. Gives people a stronger voice in democracy, and it streamlines the elections. And I think it'd be exciting for Evanston to be the first town in Illinois to adopt this. And I think it's something we should do.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have
Sure, I just wanna
Council
add my
Member
name.
Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will enthusiastically support this. I think it's a great idea. Not only will ranked choice voting lead to a more efficient use of time and community resources, it also kind of clears up that lingering question about the filing period. Not knowing if there are enough candidates to warrant a primary or not. We still have that question hanging out there. And I do think ranked choice voting will lead to a more inclusive process and is definitely in the best interest of our community. I do have one question for Council Cummings regarding the possibility of any restrictions on council members campaigning for this referendum should it be placed on the ballot. Are we allowed to do that, or are we prohibited from doing that?
Good evening, members of the Rules Committee, Chair Braithwaite, Nicholas Cummings, Corporation Counsel. I've been unable to find anything in the State Ethics Act or in our own city code of ethics that would prohibit elected officials from engaging in the type of political activity that you suggest. However, it should be clear that it is political activity, and right now our ethics code does prohibit political activity on city property. And you guys on the dais would not be able to actively campaign in support of this from the dais, notwithstanding the fact that this is city property. But I would just exercise caution with respect to the fact that it is political activity. The way that our code is written, it mostly prohibits employees such as myself from engaging in political activity and not elected officials.
So a ward meeting at the Crown Center would be city property.
Correct.
A ward meeting in a church auditorium would not be city property.
Correct.
The rule would not apply in that case.
And there will be nothing from you, financially supporting any sort of campaign in support of it, or writing op-eds or anything like that, as far as I can find under the state ethics law or the city code.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cummings, I had a quick question about this, and I'll admit I didn't read it as closely as I should have. My understanding going into this, and Councilman Harikaris, I can't remember if you were the one that used this description, it would alleviate the need of a primary. And that's sort of what stuck in my mind, and it sort of made it simple enough for me. But if there's something else that I'm missing that could potentially cause any confusion or chaos, I guess I would ask one of my members to square that up with me, or if you saw something that I would have missed.
There are two things when we were researching this. The first being that the Illinois code, the election code, very explicitly tells the bodies that are in charge of preparing ballots how to prepare a ballot. Mm-hmm. There is no means to prepare a ranked choice ballot. So we would be basically changing state law on the fly. Because when we inquired with the State Board of Elections and the County Board of Elections, the emphatic answer we received in terms of guidance was, I don't know. So preparing the ballot would be something that would be very different. And the second thing is interesting that will come up later this evening in terms of the discussion items is a change to a strong mayor form of government, according to state law, requires a primary in order to select the mayor, at least from my reading of the state code, which is cited in the memo. So that is an interesting
conflict
thing to consider if we go to ranked choice voting. And also on the ballot was a referendum to cease being a city manager form of government and move, and another question asking if we wanted to do strong mayor form of government. Adoption of the strong mayor form of government would require a primary.
Okay, so seeing that conversation comes later.
I'm sorry, Chair, I was seeking recognition on this item.
Before you speak, can you hold one moment, since I still have the floor, Councilmember Reed? I don't want to jump too far ahead, but coming into this, I didn't realize the connection between the two, so I will make a recommendation after we complete this conversation to follow up with that discussion point, and then we'll quickly move through the rest of the agenda. And seeing that we're not voting, it is for discussion, maybe put a 20-minute or so time limit, just so we're balancing the time. And if it requires more, then we'll give it more time. Councilmember Harikaris, I guess my other question to you, since you made the referral, were there examples that you look to when considering this? And is it only, I want to clarify for those that are listening, just for ballots?
So,
did you research any other cities
Yes.
that have used it, number one? The second question is, it only refers to ballots and nothing else, correct? It's for
so
clarification.
New York City used it
Right.
recently. And when you say ballots,
Just for our election ballots, so it's not going to apply to anything else. I've had some weird questions that it's seeking clarification on the point.
clarification on this?
It will only impact election ballots. That's it.
Yeah.
That's That's what I'm saying, just so it's clear to everyone paying
For
attention.
city municipal officials,
For
mayor,
city.
council, clerk.
Right, it doesn't impact anyone. Thank you very much for that. All right. Councilmember Burns? I saw your light, and then I see his hand.
Council Cummings, how many days do we have, when will we need to vote on this in order to get it on the November 8th ballot? If we didn't vote on it today, how many days out from an election do you need to pass a resolution like this for it to appear on the ballot?
You asked me to quickly, and I'm operating off of memory. I believe it's like 72 days in advance of the election. So it would need to be 72 days before the November primary.
Okay.
So sometime in August, I believe.
Oh, right. Okay. So if we didn't pass this today, we would have enough time to either at a Rules Committee meeting or at a future City Council meeting to pass this.
I would say you would be operating on a very tight timeline with the next Rules Committee being in August.
Right, which I gave the second option, which would be to have it appear on a regular City Council meeting, either as a special order of business, as just as a regular agenda item.
Sure.
Okay. The reason why I'm saying this, and I don't know where everybody else is, but I haven't discussed this at all with my residents, which is why I think Councilmember Braithwaite mistakenly said that this is for discussion, because you would think something of this magnitude would be first for discussion and then action, but I think it's actually for action. Can I get
You're correct.
clarification on
You
that,
are
Council
correct.
Cummings? This is for action today?
It came through the Referrals Committee and was for action. I will be very transparent in saying that the law department, we were seeking advice. Part of the advice we were given was that the city proposed an advisory referendum to the residents to see if it's something that they wanted first, and then follow up with the referendum on ranked choice voting. However, based on the timeline, that there's not time for that, to be perfectly honest. So we, it was placed on the agenda per the Referrals Committee for it to be for action because of the tight timeline. So it could pass the City Council, or like you said, be a special order of business at a future City Council meeting later in June or July. But again, there's a tight timeline for it if the City Council wishes to have it on the November ballot.
Yeah, if we were to wait for a Rules Committee meeting, because we meet infrequently, but we'll have quite a few City Council meetings before that time period. I just would ask for some courtesy. I think for less important issues than this, we've done the basic level of community engagement, which is, for the very least, for those of us who do ward meetings or office hours, to just talk to our community members about it. I know Councilmember Reed invited some folks on around ranked choice to at his 8th ward meeting. I'm not sure anybody else has discussed this at a meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
I know I haven't had that opportunity. I meet last Thursday of each month. I would like at the very least to invite the folks out to come and speak with them directly. We don't have any information in our packet about how this has performed in other areas, especially for disenfranchised voters. I think this is something that would be great, at face value, something that would be great for folks like myself who are high information voters, because it allows me to do all the research on a pretty long ballot, right? Not only having to consider two options, which is what the case is in primary elections, but to have to consider a pretty long ballot. I have to do that research and then be ready on that one day to rank all of them, without this turning into what I think happens in judicial races, where it is you end up voting based on last names or any other arbitrary reason. So I like this. I've always liked ranked choice just from looking at it, but I don't have anything on my packet that talks about how this is performed in other areas. I haven't had an opportunity to discuss this with Fifth Ward residents. I think if we are going to talk about ranked choice voting, again, at face value, this feels like something that would be really beneficial when coupled with something like campaign finance reform, which we haven't had an opportunity to discuss. And so in this time between now and, again, as a courtesy, the next meeting, hopefully, if I can get some agreement on that, like if we're going to do something of this magnitude, let's talk about it more comprehensively if we're going to overhaul the way we elect candidates. But So I would ask for that as a courtesy, and I know Councilman Reed also has his hands up. But
Noted.
I just
Did
wanted
you
to
want-
let
Yes,
you guys know that August 8th is the deadline.
Okay, so there's several months to bring this back. Thank you. I'm going to hear Councilmember Reed, and I'll support what you're saying. Councilmember Reed, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I didn't know we had time limits in committee. Councilmember Hericades, can you talk about talk about a few cities that have implemented this in the U.S. and what their experience has been outside of New York?
Let me get that.
Were
data
folks
up.
able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh.
He said he'll get back to you on that. Is there another question that you have, Councilmember Reed?
Oh, you'll get back. Okay, I didn't understand if that was. So you're unable to discuss?
He just said he'll get back to you. Is there another question you have, Councilmember Reed?
Yeah. So I have a question for Council Cummings. This was. Hold on 1 second.
So Alyssa Kaplan's here. She can speak to a little bit more informed data about which cities use ranked choice voting.
Yeah, my name is Elisa Kaplan. I'm the Executive Director of Reform for Illinois, and we're advocating for this resolution. This is Larry Garfield from Fairvote, Illinois. Larry, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to do it?
I will note, as mentioned, New York City. As mentioned, New York City used ranked choice voting last year for the first time, and the polling data suggested it was wildly popular. I believe it is 95% of voters understood it. They got it. Most voters ranked multiple candidates. They had no issue with it. San Francisco, Berkeley, and a number of other cities in the Bay Area have been using it for several years, and I think around 20 or so years, and have seen, in their case, cost savings because they've been able to eliminate primaries. Minneapolis and St. Paul have used it for a number of years as well, and their elected officials have observed that when campaigning, there's a lot less elbowing, a lot less negative campaigning, because candidates want to be someone's second place choice or third place choice. So the standard campaign tactic of make yourself look good by making someone else look bad backfires. So it encourages, the candidates themselves have seen the campaigns become nicer and more pleasant, both for voters and for the.
Policy, you have 2 minutes left in your time, just so we're clear on your questions. We're keeping track of everyone's time. You're correct.
I don't know where that rule is.
Well, right now, that's where we are in the meeting, so you have 2 minutes left for your questions, Councilmember Reed.
It's also used in Santa Fe, which recently passed it.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt then. I would think that this is something that benefits all of us, but if this is counting toward my time.
Ask your question.
Okay. Member Harry Karras, I'm really interested in this. So I like ranked choice voting. I think it's an interesting idea. I think there are plenty of democracy reforms out there that would be great for the city. I'm concerned. One of my concerns about this is whether it's constitutional or not. And so can you talk a little bit about that?
Like constitution, like it.
If it comports with the Illinois Constitution.
I would imagine our legal department looked into it, and I imagine.
So we have a minute left. Nick,
Well,
would you like to respond
I'll
to
claim
that
my
question?
Time. Sure, I'll claim my time. In that case, I was asking because you're the sponsor of this. So, Council Cummings. So, the Illinois Constitution, I'm blanking on the article, maybe it's Article 9, whatever local government is, it provides that a municipality may provide only by referendum for the selection manner of their officers. When I read that and I think about the common and the legal definition of manner, it seems that the selection manner would conform with the election law that already exists, because the word manner means the customs of procedure, right? Because when your mother told you to mind your manners, it meant do what everyone else is doing and mind the customs of the situation. And the customs in Illinois.
seconds, Councilmember.
All right. Well, I don't know where this rule is, but with the selection manner and the word manner, if we are to
Right.
change the selection,
Your time is up, and I would this time like
Well,
to,
I
your
moved
time
to-
is
I-
up, and then
I-
at this time, I'd
point of
like
order.
to
Point of order. It has to be
recognize.
recognized. I'm sorry, but a point of order.
So I'm not
has to
going
be
to talk
recognized.
over you. You had your 5 minutes. The time now moves to Mayor Biss,
Point of order. That is
and then
not a
we
rule.
can, again, Mayor Biss, you
I
have the
move
floor.
to override the ruling
Thank
of
you.
the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just perhaps this will be helpful in clearing something up. I have in my possession a letter from Lisa Madigan, who was at the time Attorney General, to Barbara Flynn Curry, who was already at the time House Majority Leader, dated September 7th, 2005, addressing this specific question. And concluding, based on her analysis, that the home rule powers granted to municipalities in the Constitution enable a referendum to implement a ranked choice voting system. So I'm happy to share that with the whole council if folks haven't seen it, but I think it is quite decisive on this point.
Thank you. Before we entertain other rounds, and I see Harry Carr as your light, and I can't sure if that was on for a second time. This is, I would agree with Councilmember Burns. I tried to read it and get as much information out of it. And this is something, because it involves the election ballots, I would like an opportunity to host you at my meetings as well, where it's noticed and we can get direct feedback from our residents before taking action on it. That's
happy
where,
to speak.
Thank you. That's where I am, and I'm agreeing with Councilmember Burns. We have Councilmember Nguyen, who's not had an opportunity to speak, followed by, excuse me, Councilmember Sufferton. Councilmember Nguyen, followed by Councilmember Sufferton. You have
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
5 minutes.
I am strongly in favor of this as well, and thank you, Councilmember Howard Cars, for bringing this forward. I think that just a brief list of the communities all across the United States that have adopted this, I think demonstrate that it accomplishes a lot of goals, and one of them, it makes campaigns less expensive because there's only one time that everyone is voting. It tends to draw people towards the center because they have to find a second candidate that they like. I mean, it's something that we do intuitively as human beings. We decide, okay, if I can't have this, then this is what I'll have. And as someone who has a lot of family in the New York metropolitan area, New York did this and did it extremely successfully, as you said. Evanston can do this. This isn't that difficult to understand. And I actually think that we should go ahead and approve this tonight and move it to the council agenda at some point in the future, because waiting until the next Rules Committee is going to make it too tight a timeline. I'm happy to have you at my next ward meeting, and there's lots of information out there in the community. Mayor Biss and I were just looking at the list. It's remarkable. A number of communities in Utah use this. So this is something that isn't just a coastal issue, but something that is growing in popularity throughout the country. So I'm very much in favor of moving this forward. I'm sure we can provide the information that's necessary to the public. This isn't difficult to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. And then followed by Councilmember Ravel. You can start your comment.
Okay, yeah, I guess it's a point.
Pardon me.
Yeah, good to go? I won't use all 5, I promise.
No, it's yours. Do you have also, Ravel, after Suffer Day? I'm just keeping track of time.
Yeah.
You have the floor, Councilmember.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it. So just to be clear, our action today is not final action. The final action would be the voters in November. Our action today would be moving this forward to the same group of people to vote on. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ravel.
Well, I would just like to
let people know that I'm strongly supportive of this change as well. And I think the sooner we get started with the community education, the better. And luckily, we have Reform for Illinois right here in our front yard. And also the League of Women Voters is strongly supportive of this as well. So we do have a number of resources in the community to help with the community education. So I'd like to see us move forward as quickly as we can.
Excuse my dry cough. Councilman Burns, did you want to change your position?
No, I just want to clarify too that this really didn't need to come to Rules Committee in the first place. There's nothing in our code that requires it. So not to confuse things, I'm just saying enough time before this appears on a council agenda to discuss this with my ward residents. I'm thankful for all the organizations that have brought this to us. And again, at face value, I support it. I have for a while. I have to point out that none of those organizations, as far as I understand, are, Black or Latinx led or are majority run by those members of our community. And so, although it's great to hear everybody else up here is satisfied with what they understand about this, we have not properly educated or went to the community to get feedback from them really at all. And again, the members up here are all higher information voters. And again, the organizations, as far as the ones that have reached out to me, I don't think are Black-led or Latinx organizations or represent disenfranchised voters. And that's what I would like information on, to see if in other places this has led to higher turnout among disenfranchised voters. And I don't have anything in my packet to suggest that. I'm sure that may be the case, but we haven't received that information yet. So again, to be clear, I'm just looking for a little bit of time to talk to my community about this. Hopefully between now and when this appears at the next council meeting, we can get some more information about all the wonderful outcomes in different communities on the East Coast. And I'd love to read it and learn more about it, but I don't have that with me, today.
Thank you for your comments. Corporation Counsel Cummings, just based on the timing that you just stated, what's the maximum amount of time that would allow Councilmember Burns, and I'll probably do a joint meeting, we can tag on and knock it out with just one meeting?
So city manager and Darcy, correct me if I'm wrong, but items that are passed along from this meeting would not appear on the city council agenda until the 27th meeting of the 27th.
Okay.
So you would have from today until June 27th that it would appear for the first time, but it would need to pass city council no later than August 8th.
Oh, plenty of time.
Because the clerk would actually have to prepare it in time to make sure it actually gets on the ballot in November. The second thing that I just wanted to mention, and I think I'm anticipating answering the question that Councilmember Reed was trying to ask, in terms of the manner of voting, there is some risk, because it's unknown, because we don't have an answer, that once this is done, when we try to get the ballots printed, that the Board of Elections says we can't do that because state law says the ballot has to be printed a certain way. But everything else allows us to do this. Mayor Biss provided the law department with the opinion from Lisa Madigan. There's case law from this Illinois Supreme Court from 1974 that says we can do this. My only concern, again, is when we send the ballot, the State Board of Elections looks at us like we're cross-eyed. So that's the only
detail we have to pay attention to.
Yes.
All right. If I'm paying attention to all the comments and my little notes that I wrote, it appears that there's enough votes to move this forward, with the understanding of giving myself and Councilmember Burns time to host a meeting, and we'll invite our two guests here.
Point of
can we go
information.
ahead and...
Point of information for Council Cummings. You just said that there's a case from 1974 that says we can do this. Was that not a 1974 case about removal from office? That was not the removal case?
No. It was a case about changing the number of trustees that could be elected, even though the municipal code requires a certain number of village trustees. The Village of Arlington Heights decided they wanted to have a different number, and the Supreme Court said that they could by referendum, even though it was in conflict with municipal code. So that specifically says the court found that the change in the manner of selection of municipal officers and their terms superseded the provisions of municipal code. What I'm talking about, though, is the election code. So I don't know, we don't have an answer whether a referendum can supersede the election code.
So the 1974 case doesn't directly
So
apply,
I'm gonna
doesn't directly
call-
apply to this, correct?
I'm going to just say, if you want to answer that question, how about you answer that offline? It has nothing to do with the outcome of this vote right now. Thank
It should
you.
have everything to do with it. We're talking about whether or not something, we're creating laws that are constitutional. We should want to craft this in a way that it actually stands up to legal scrutiny. Why do we rush through important conversations, especially something as important as the selection manner of the people who run this city? Ramming this through like this is inappropriate.
Thank you very much for your comment. So seeing no other lights for recognition, if we can.
Council, just one last question to council comments
Yes,
about
sir.
this is a resolution. So the 27th, it would be voted on and approved. I think you said that it would be, voted on for the first time. It's the first and last would be the 27th.
It would just appear on the agenda for the first time, and the council could decide to hold it. You
Okay.
could decide
I just want to
to-
make sure we're clear on that.
Yeah,
then.
yes.
This is a resolution, only requires one reading. All right.
All right.
Can I speak or no? I've had my hand raised for a long time.
Councilmember Kelly, there's no way until you start to speak, if you could give me the
Okay.
courtesy of a text, since you're not present
I
here at the
did. I
meeting.
did text you
Okay.
several.
Well, now I know. I didn't know before, but please, if you
I don't
have
know
a
either. I
comment.
rarely attend virtually, so I apologize.
Thank you.
So I just want to comment also. So generally, I've been very enthusiastic about ranked choice voting, but I am a little bit disappointed because I do think we owe it to ourselves to be really well informed. Right? It's great to hear that there's a cost savings, that people are nicer. We all love that. And I don't know about moving more to the center. That would be up for debate, whether that's, different people would have different opinions about that. But I think we really need to understand the impact so that we can better impart information. I also, of course, want to share it with my ward and get feedback from my ward members, but I would hope that we all could become better informed about the impact, particularly to Councilmember Burns' questions and concerns about, disenfranchised voters. Like, let's hear what the impact has been. And from these different communities. I don't think it's enough to say cost savings and people are nicer. Like, we want a more democratic process, right? That's ultimately what we're looking for. And so I think it's really incumbent that we all understand that, not, I'm going to be doing a lot of research between now and my next ward meeting, but we should all be, I would like a presentation about impact, I think. So I'm just going to say that whenever this comes up next, if it's at the next council meeting or if it's held over to our next rules meeting, I would like that we have a comprehensive presentation about the impact of this form of election. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kelly. And just for those in the audience and everyone else listening, I think that will be the third voice concern that our Corporation Council has heard. So just between now and our next City Council meeting where this will appear for introduction, Councilmember Hirakaris, I'm going to suggest that you reach out to the members who have expressed concern, and also our guests. You've been invited now to two ward meetings, one hosted by myself and Councilmember Burns, and the other coming from Councilmember Kelly. All right. Seeing no additional lights, can we go ahead and take a vote on this? Simple consensus should move us forward. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Just Mr. Chair, because Councilmember Kelly is participating remotely, it has to be a roll call vote.
Thank you very much, sir. Ms. Francello?
You ready? Councilmember Hirakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Sefferdin. Aye. Councilmember Burns. Aye. Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn. Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Mayor Biss.
All right. We'll continue to move along. Item R2 is resolution amending the Designated Freedom of Information Act officers for the City of Evanston. Clerk Mendoza recommends this adoption of 40-R22, amending Designated Freedom of Information Act officers for the City of Evanston. This is for action. Is there a second?
Second.
Who moved it?
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Councilmember Reed.
I'm sorry, I'll let whoever introduced it speak first. Who made the referral?
It was referred by the city clerk.
Oh. Was this this went through referrals committee?
Do you have a question, Councilmember Reed, or is this your question?
I'm asking questions right now.
This is your question?
I'm asking
Okay.
questions. Can someone confirm whether or not this went through referrals committee? It did? Okay, I just didn't know. I'd never seen that the city clerk had the ability to make referrals. So, but okay. So what this does, I do support part of this. Certainly, I believe the city clerk should be a FOIA officer. I'm trying to track the changes. It seems like the only thing that happens here, and it's not in the draft, which I think is a bit concerning, but it seems like it just removes the FOIA officer that was previously in the collector's office. Is that a correct summation?
And adds the new deputy city clerks is what it's supposed to do.
The previous resolution didn't have the deputy city clerks listed as the former city clerk. I'm very sure that my deputy, go ahead.
From my understanding, it did not, but I can look up the other resolution and get back to you.
Yeah, and that's not my issue, but the former one did. I think it's removing the FOIA officer in the collector's office, which I think is good policy. I think we also need to go ahead and remove the FOIA officers in the police department and law department. I think the clerk's office will, as pushed for when I was clerk, will still be able to work with all of the departments. It'll just be that independently elected office that is responsible for FOIA, as opposed to giving the police department siloed ability to approve or deny FOIAs, which we should, as folks who speak about equity, we should know that have given the police department sole power over the release of their records is not the best policy. And the same thing with the law department, putting in a system of checks and balances where the police department.
You're at 3 amendments, Councilmember Reed.
Where the police department is able to, where the police department transfers the records that are set to be released to an independent office, to the clerk, and the clerk is then able to verify and take responsibility for release. I think that is the best system, and that is the gold standard, creating checks and balances when it comes to the release of records, particularly records that are held by the police department and siloed there. So I move that we amend this to strike the FOIA officers for the police department and for the law department.
Seeing no seconds, I'm not sure if that is a motion, but it dies. And you
I'll
still
second.
have-
I'm sorry. I second.
Let me pause the time for a moment. It's been properly moved and seconded. Can you just give a response to that, and then that way we can decide if there's a vote to be taken?
Sure. The clerk is actually trying to get in the meeting, but she can't get in. So if the administrator of the Zoom is able to let her in. Secondly, 57.
The clerk is online.
Okay. 57R19.
Clerk's online.
57R19 did not include the deputy city clerks. It only created FOIA officers for the police department, the law department, and named the city clerk for the FOIA officer for the remainder of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unless there's some other question, but those are the two things that I was trying to respond to.
I'm not sure where that leaves us. It was your amendment. Is it just a matter of voting on the amendment?
Right. Do you understand what the amendment is?
No, I want to be able to repeat it. That's why I asked. So the amendment is, one more time, to
strike the language that makes the police department its own FOIA officer, and that makes the law department its own FOIA officer.
Okay.
It creates checks and balances.
All right. It's been properly moved and seconded by Councilmember Kelly, the amendment. Ms. Franchella, do you mind reading? Or, excuse me, calling the roll? Oh, I'm sorry. I can't. I have it blocked. Did you want to speak to it?
It's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Does the clerk want to speak to this?
Hi, Councilmember Braithwaite. I
could not hear the question. This is Clerk Mendoza.
There's an amendment on the floor, Clerk Mendoza, that will strike the two departments, the police department as well as the law department, from the existing memo to not have their own FOIA officers, if I repeated that correctly.
Councilmember Braithwaite, if you could repeat, I did not hear what you just said.
Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Braithwaite and Clerk Mendoza. Hello. The amendment, the motion that is on the floor is to remove the police department and the law department as their own FOIA officers and make the clerk's office the sole FOIA officer. It would maintain the relationship with those departments and producing records and assisting, but they would not have final determination on whether the records were set to be released without the independent clerk's office verifying it.
Is this a question?
It is a motion that we're getting ready to take action and vote on.
Yes, so we thought it was necessary to update who the designated FOIA officers are. As you know, we have 2 staff members that started in our office, and then we would also be removing a person who's actually now in the collector's office.
Okay.
And you want me to? I did not hear the amendment.
No, it's all right. I think our city manager, Gandersky, wanted to respond, and then we have Alderman
Okay,
Burns.
go ahead.
And we do have a motion that's on the floor as a reminder.
So before there's a, good evening, Chair Braithwaite and members of the Rules Committee, Kelly Gandersky, interim city manager. Before there's a vote on this, I just want to make sure that Clerk Mendoza understands the ramifications of that amendment, meaning the police department and the law department would no longer be instrumental in preparing FOIA documents anymore and certifying that those are the correct documents after a search. So I'm not sure if the clerk's office has the capacity to handle all of that. So I think that needs to be considered before there's a vote taken.
All right, I understand that. I have Councilmember Burns, and then I'll make a comment. And then Chief, did you want to speak to that as well? Do you mind coming to the podium? Councilmember Burns, and then I'll make a quick comment, and we'll go to the Chief, and then we'll vote on the amendment. And then we still have a lengthy evening ahead of us, and that's why I'm keeping this cadence.
I'll hold my comments until Chief Evanston speaks, and also can you explain what, or City Manager Godersky, if you can reiterate your point, or Chief Evanston, you can, in whatever order, and I'll hold my comments until afterwards.
Thank you, Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the courtesy of being recognized. One of the things that I wanted to mention to the group before you make a decision on this is the volume of FOIAs handled by the police department is staggering. Also, we're probably, I don't know if anybody else is in the city, has to handle the amount of digital information vis-a-vis the body cameras that we gather. And so I don't want to foist on the clerk's office a whole bunch of work that they're not staffed up to do. One of the changes that I made since returning to the department is I personally sign all the outgoing FOIA requests. To me, it's a good way of seeing what the public's concerned about, what they're interested in, and what the volume is. And once again, the volume is huge, and I think if we move this to the clerk's office, I would imagine that's going to create a staffing issue for them. The times I've been back in the Civic Center, it doesn't appear to me that they've got a whole bunch of extra time on their hands. And so I don't want to be silent on this and wind up offloading a bunch of work to the clerk's office that they're not staffed up to do. Thank you for the courtesy.
No, thank you very much, Chief Addington. That was very enlightening. City Manager Gandersky, did you want to
I think the chief made my point. I think this would actually slow down. The more I've had the 2 minutes to consider the amendment, this would actually slow down the FOIA process rather than speed it up, because it would take each department to have to pull the documents after the request from the FOIA officers from the clerk's office. And the clerk's office would have to double review what the departments have already reviewed. And we already have FOIA officers that certify that those responses are the entire list of documents that have been produced after a diligent search. So I think that could actually slow down the process. My understanding of Clerk Mendoza's request here was to create additional resources to respond to FOIA so that the response times could actually go down.
All right, we have,
Yeah, if I can weigh in too on the amendment, sorry, now.
please.
Can you hear me?
I can. You have the floor, followed by Councilmember Newsome,
so,
then we'll vote on the amendment.
You know, I am, from my perspective, you know, we're there to fulfill FOIAs, and we're, you know, I'm fine with doing whatever the council decides. The only issue that I would have is that, you know, if the council decides that they want us to be the sole office who fulfills FOIAs, we also need the resources from council to be able to do this. You know, the police department has one person who is a designated FOIA officer. That's their full-time job. And the law department has another person. We need those two, you know, same staff people in our office to be able to do this full time. This is, you know, it takes you know, I don't know to what extent Councilor Reed, you know, did this last time when he was clerk, but it really does take a lot of people to be able to fulfill as many FOIAs as we're fulfilling every single day, if that makes any sense. Thank you.
Very much, Councilmember Burns, followed by Councilmember Newsome, then I'd ask that we vote on the amendment to keep us moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is going to pass anyway, but just for the sake of just trying to clarify. So with FOIA, each department has always processed its own FOIA requests. The police department, operationally, this is 100% the case. If you have I will end my time, and I mean, I will stop my time if you want to challenge that. But
I just wanted to understand what you mean by process their own FOIA requests.
The work has always been done by the police department to look through the records and to provide them.
Yes.
That's not what we're talking. What's being described is not what I think Councilmember Reed is referring to. What he's referring to is a change that was made during the last administration to just change who is designated a FOIA officer in name, not in much in the work that's being done, because the police department has always done their own. They've always provided their own records because they have them. Right, it is in their facilities where these records are held. So it's not like the clerk was going to the police department or a deputy clerk was going to the police department to find these records and then produce them. So that's not the change. I don't think the change is a big deal unless, here's where it might be a big deal, which is what we thought back then, is who decides to close the FOIA request and to make the final, denial to the requester. That's where it may or may not make a difference depending on the answer to that question. So Council Cummings or Clerk Mendoza, who decides when a FOIA request is closed out and is officially denied? Is that the clerk's office, or is it the police department or law department, et cetera?
It really depends upon where the request is going. If the request goes to the police department specifically, once the records are gathered and the proper redactions, if any, are made, then the police department has the ability within next request to respond, on its own. Same thing for the law department. Otherwise, those records are provided to the city clerk, and the city clerk then closes out and responds to the FOIA request. And generally speaking, the law department will consult regardless if there's any sort of question. Alexandra Ruggie is the primary person, but all of us are trained and required annually to certify under FOIA so that we can answer the questions to see if redactions are proper, if we should release stuff that somebody has a question about. And I think, recently, at least since interim city manager Kandersky was the corporation counsel and now myself, we've probably been a little more liberal with our interpretation with respect to what should and shouldn't be released versus in the past. So, we're going to continue to advise regardless of who the FOIA officer is. However, the determination is mainly by the city clerk, but there is the authority within next request to, sort of publish that by both Mrs. Ruggie and the police department.
And so my question is, does a police department or a law department or any other department
2 minutes,
have the
Councilmember.
ability, thank you, to close out a FOIA request? Because that is an official action that you can do in next request.
Yes.
And they do that.
Insofar as I'm aware, yes, but the vast majority of the responses come from the city clerk's office.
Okay. And so I think that and Councilman Reed can correct me if I'm wrong, but the change would basically allow the city clerk, before a referral or a FOIA request is officially closed out, it would allow a period where the clerk could review it and determine whether or not that denial was made properly. Because ultimately, under the previous way this was arranged, the clerk was the sole FOIA officer and therefore, directly responsible for making the final call. So I just wanted to be clear that there will not be any additional work on the clerk's office. This is more so if there's a review period before the FOIA request is closed
You have
out
1 minute.
for the clerk.
So
If I can respond to that, sorry, Nick. So there would be additional work because right now the way it works is you have FOIA officers in different departments, and those FOIA officers will fulfill the FOIA and then close it out. So if you're saying that all the FOIAs need to be closed out just by the clerk's office, that means that the review period, all of those reviews need to be done by the clerk's office. That would require, the FOIA officers in the clerk's office to review and close out more than 2,000 FOIAs a year. Right now, we're splitting the work between all of the FOIA officers that we have designated right now.
What I'm saying is, unless requests have doubled since my time, we did that same work under
You have 10 seconds,
we did that
Councilmember.
same work under similar staffing. So that's what I meant by it certainly wouldn't require additional staff to do that work.
Well,
And
I don't
that's
know
your
how many
time.
FOIAs were, sorry, can I continue talking or no?
Please, just if you could wrap up, and
Okay.
then we have Councilmember Nusma.
Okay, I don't know how many FOIAs you were fulfilling when you were working there, but we are definitely, last year, I know we fulfilled more than 2,600 FOIAs. I don't have the number off the top of my head. I wouldn't be able to tell you, but understand that since you work there, we also have additional questions. We have additional work that's being done in the office. So I don't know what work you were doing when you were there, but we are definitely doing more work. There's added work. So it's not just FOIA that we do in that office.
Okay, thank you, Clerk. Councilmember Nusma, and then we'll take the vote.
Thank you, Chair. I am going to respectfully oppose Councilmember Reed's amendment, but I'm not philosophically opposed to the direction he's going. I just don't think there are enough answers to the questions that are being expressed tonight to vote in favor of that amendment, but I wouldn't welcome the opportunity at some future date to have a more fully informed discussion. So
Thank you.
I'll leave it at there.
Thank you. All right, let's please take a roll call on the amendment, followed by a roll call on the vote.
I had a question, but I did text you, Councilmember Braithwaite.
Councilmember Kelly, is this question pertaining to the amendment on the floor or to the vote?
It is.
To your question, Councilmember?
Yeah. So my question is, I just want to get a better understanding in terms of what kind of either reallocation of funding. I mean, I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about the gold standard for FOIA, and I'd like to ask, I think Councilmember Reed and also Clerk Mendoza about this, but the gold standard in terms of, reallocating resources, if we had an office that's, was the FOIA team versus each department having its own FOIA officer, like, would it be possible, how much would this cost in addition to have, an office that's dedicated to FOIA? And I understand that it would still go through each department, as Councilmember Burns pointed out, but I wonder, Councilmember Reed and then maybe Mendoza, if you could just speak a little bit to sort of a gold standard in terms of a FOIA process at the municipal level.
Councilmember Kelly, I appreciate the value of your question. I would think that something like that is going to require a little bit more research and also time to unpack. Just for members of the community as well as our rules It's now 6 o'clock and we are on our second item. So I'm going to go ahead respectfully, Councilmember Kelly. I think that's information that you can follow up directly
Well, it's
with
hard
the
to vote
clerk.
on this without understanding, so.
So right
I mean,
now, we're
perhaps-
just voting on the amendment, and then we have.
Point of order.
I'm not going to get into the order right now.
I have 5 minutes to
Okay.
discuss.
Thank you.
Point of order.
Thank
And
you
so
for your
I
comments.
moved-
Thank you.
It's not a comment, it's a motion that she has 5 minutes. You're interrupting her 5 minutes. She hasn't spoken on this item. She has to be given at least her 5 minutes to ask whatever question she wants to ask.
So we're now into 3 minutes. Councilmember Kelly, are you all right with, based on the length of that question, following up directly with the clerk?
Well, I guess to understand the amendment, I still would like to know if we were to either reallocate resources to the clerk's office, or add, increase our budget. This is what I need to understand to get a better understanding as to whether or not I would support this amendment. And I thought that perhaps I would like to know about gold standards and FOIA divisions within municipalities. And that's why I asked both our clerks, Clerk Reed, who was there for 4 years as a clerk. I wanted to get his opinion on that. I'd also like to hear from Clerk Mendoza in terms of what is the best way to proceed. And again, I fully understand that records would still be processed through the respective departments, but in terms of ultimately the FOIA officers, how funds are best allocated and how that is best arranged. It would be if I could get some sort of response and understanding to that in terms of gold standard and like what we're talking about in terms of funding, if that were a possibility to have it centralized in the clerk's office.
Clerk Mendoza, the time is now 4:21, so if you can do that in 30 seconds, go.
And Reed too. I wanted both. I mean, I think.
Okay, I will answer really quickly. Realistically speaking, we would need someone, with some sort of, we rely a lot on the law department. We need someone with that sort of training. And, probably perhaps one more person. I really, your question, I need some time to look at how much people are getting paid, how much, that would cost. But
That
we would
concludes your
want
time,
someone there
Clerk.
to be able to review.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have a vote on the floor. It's been properly moved and seconded. We'd have a very robust dialogue. Ms. Francelmo, do you please mind calling the roll on the amendment?
Councilmember Herrick Harris.
No.
Councilmember Reed.
Yes.
Councilmember Ravel.
No.
Councilmember Suffredin. Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Nusma.
No.
Councilmember Nguyen. Councilmember Braithwaite.
No.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Mayor Biss.
With only 3 council members voting for it, the amendment fails, and now we move directly to R2, which is Resolution 40-R22, amending the Designated Freedom of Information Act officers for the city of Evanston. Can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Herrick Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
No.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin. Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen. Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye. No, I'm sorry. No.
All right, with
Mayor
2
Biss.
With 2 council members voting no, the R2 passes. Next up, we have, and again, I'm just going to be mindful of time, 1 hour and 10 minutes going into 2, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with 2 discussion items and a very long Human Services Committee. So thank you all for your cooperation. Item 3, I'd like to move ordinance 21-022, amending Title 2, 18 of the City Code concerning the Economic Development Committee. Our staff-
Second.
So moved.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. Ms. Francelmo, do you mind calling roll? Seeing no lights for discussion.
Councilmember Herrick Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen. Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Mayor Bis.
With all votes in, R3 passes unanimously. That now brings us to R4, which is ordinance.
moved.
I'd like to move I4, ordinance 47-0-22, amending Title I, Chapter 8, City Manager Code, and this is being recommended by Councilmember Reed to basically move to majority versus 7. This is for action.
So moved.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Councilmember Reed.
Actually, we need a second, so second.
I moved it and he seconded it.
Chair can't move items.
In a committee setting, the chair can move an
I just moved it and
agenda.
you seconded it, and now we can start your 5 minutes.
I guess I'll just call the question to save time.
Dar, did anyone else like to speak?
I'll second. Or,
It's been moved and seconded. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on it? I'll go ahead and say it. I think.
I'm sorry, the motion to call the question is non-debatable.
So, again, I asked if anyone wanted to speak. My preference for this, just given the fact that we are in the process of a city manager search, I think it's important that
Excuse
we
me, Chair,
leave it
the motion is
at
non-debatable.
At 7?
Point of order, the motion
Versus
is
majority,
non-debatable.
and
Calling the question is
You can go
non-debatable.
ahead and call the vote. Thank you.
Hold
Councilmember
on, are we
Harris.
voting on the motion to call the question or on?
That's what I was
the underlying
saying.
thing?
I mean, at this point, he was, I think.
Just
the thought
tell it.
was
I just
that
want to know what I'm voting on,
We're
that's
going to
all.
vote on the motion. We're going to vote on the ordinance change. There you go.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
So we're voting on the ordinance itself?
Yes.
yes.
No.
Councilmember Sufferton. Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma. Councilmember Wynn. Councilmember Braithwaite.
No.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Point of order.
Mayor Biss.
Point of order. The motion to call the question was not withdrawn, and so that motion has to be voted on. And so, I mean, I'm happy to withdraw the motion to call the question, but that had to be. I thought I was a bit confused here. I thought that was what we were voting on originally because that's how it works. The motion to call the question has to be voted on. It was not removed.
I appreciate your comment, and it's moot because
Corporation
we already
Council
all
Cummings, can you address
just
that?
voted. So it was,
To address the council member's question, the chair did not recognize, even though the motion was moved and seconded, the chair did not recognize the motion.
The chair
and
can't
moved
do that.
and went ahead and called the ordinance. The chair still has to recognize the motion being made. The motion was never recognized and called and the vote was called on the ordinance.
so,
Okay, new rule then. Chairs can just overrule any motions.
Yeah, I'd like
Let
some
that be a
research on
precedent.
that, not today, but I
Thank
would
you.
like some research
Thank
on that.
you.
It's in Robert's rules that if the chair doesn't recognize the motion, it's
If
out
you
of
could
order.
just send it to me, yeah.
I
that'd be
will.
great. Thank you.
I'll let you use the book.
all right. So just to clarify where we are in the votes, and we can manage that outside of this meeting. There were 1, 2, 3, 4 noes, and 1, 2, 3, 4.
There were 6 noes.
It was 6 noes. So let's just quickly do it.
We're
one more
doing
time.
R4,
We're doing R4.
6 noes and 4 yeas.
Point
No,
of
he's just
information.
counting.
Point of information.
Can you hold, go ahead. What did you count?
6 noes.
6 noes and 4. Okay, thank you. So this fails based on the count, and we're now going to move to R5. I would like to move ordinance 51-0-22, amending City Code Title I, Chapter 10, Section 5, dealing with official misconduct. It's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any comments?
Chair Braithwaite, I don't know if you got the email, but Councilmember Kelly did submit a proposed amendment to this ordinance.
Okay, I did not. Give me one moment to, Nick, do you want to just go ahead and read that?
Councilmember Kelly proposed that the final bullet point under, that's listed in section 1, paragraph H, and I apologize, all of this should have been underlined because this would be new language in the code. But that final bullet point, Councilmember Kelly proposes that it reads, exercises authority, whether real or perceived, to intimidate, coerce, or otherwise interfere with the normal operation of the city or with the well-being of the residents, such that the behavior creates a hostile environment.
What time did that come in? Okay, that's why I didn't read it. I didn't see it at 5:22. Thank you. I don't have it, and I'm looking for it right now.
I emailed it to you.
I don't have it either.
I'll forward it again. I did email it to everybody.
Right. And just, I realize that we all have busy work schedules. If we're just going to have to wait, you got it?
Yeah, you want it to.
I don't have it. I'm looking, it hasn't come in yet. It's 6:05. If someone, can you read that one more time, Corporation Counsel?
The proposed amendment is to exercise, it should read, exercises authority, whether real or perceived, to intimidate, coerce, or otherwise interfere with the normal operation of the city or with the well-being of residents, which is the added language, such that the behavior creates a hostile environment.
Can you forward that?
Yeah. Can you summarize that, Corporation, because you have it in front of you, how it relates to, I'm now flipping back and forth between the packet and that, so I'm doing my best to keep us organized and keeping us moving.
So the proposed ordinance is to add the anti-harassment provisions that apply to employees to all covered persons under the Ethics Code. And it talks about what harassment may include but not be limited to. And there are 4 sort of examples listed. The last one being the use of authority, whether it be me as a department head or just as an attorney, whether real or perceived, to intimidate, coerce, or otherwise interfere with the normal operation of the city. And Councilmember Kelly is proposing that it also include interfere with the well-being of residents as well.
So this would be Councilmember Kelly, so this would read, so council members exercising authority, whether real or perceived, to intimidate, coerce, otherwise interfere with normal operations of the city with the well-being of residents, such as behavior creates a hostile. That's
Yeah,
what
so
you
just
want us to
clear, I
follow.
didn't delete anything. I didn't change anything. I simply added the part about residents. I mean, I think Ms. Rosinski spoke to it today, that seems obvious, but I just wanted to make sure we add that also, that, anybody employed by the city or an official that obviously are a contractor, that we hold this bar also in terms of their treatment of our residents. And that's all. I just added those couple words to include treatment of our residents.
Okay,
That we're not creating hostile environments with our residents.
I'll accept that as a friendly unless somebody has a really strong opinion, and then we can move it to a vote. Seeing no lights for, you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've had
Okay,
my-
I have Wynn, I'm gonna move, followed by Reed, and then Burns.
I appreciate the spirit in which this is said, but I do think the language is, the well-being of a resident, I think is very vague.
Okay.
And I am confused by what that means. And I think that will cause confusion in terms of how this is acted on. I would have liked to have heard about this more than at 5:22 PM. I was already in my car on my way here. I agree with the underlying ordinance, that this should apply to all, to, this broader group of us. But I am uncertain about what is the well-being of a resident.
Right, so if I may, we also have in this bullet point to the normal operation, which is also, I think, but the important part here that is concrete is such that, which I didn't change, such that the behavior creates a hostile environment. And that's the piece that would apply to normal operation or to the well-being of your residents. Does it, has there been an interference, say by contractors, say by officials, by anybody, such that the behavior is creating a hostile environment? We absolutely have to have our residents included in this, the same way their well-being is what we aim to serve, right, in the city, just like the normal, which is also very broad and vague clause, normal operation of the city, the well-being of our residents. I don't think there's anything, there's any other way to say it other than that. The well-being, we don't want to create a hostile environment that would impede their well-being. A city official,
2 minutes.
a contractor, or any staff member, and that's all. I think this is very basic language that absolutely needs to be included. And again, it's followed by that, after that comma, such that the behavior creates a hostile environment. It's not saying we have to all just make sure they have, that we provide for their well-being. It's not saying that. It's saying that we don't, that no authority operates in a way that creates a hostile environment.
Thank you. Councilmember Reed, followed by Burns.
Yes, I to the same line that Councilmember Nguyen was just asking about or speaking on about vague language. It says exercise authority, whether real or perceived, to intimidate, coerce, or otherwise interfere with the normal operation of the city, such that the behavior creates a hostile environment. So, first, how do Council Cummings or whoever wants to answer this? How do we define normal operation?
And while you're looking at that, Nick, I just want to just confirm that this is straight from our current manual, correct?
Well, once our human resources division manager comes back from vacation, yes.
Okay.
It'll be the manual. The normal operation of the city is probably a question better answered by the city manager's office. But in the sense that we have had incidents where elected officials have had interactions with city employees in the past and all the way up until the present, where the elected official, this is something that's also up for discussion with respect to the role of a council member. There are sometimes city employees feel the pressure or the obligation, because the elected officials are chosen by the residents, that they exercise some sort of perceived authority over them. And so they sometimes may or may not be intimidated. And it can create a hostile work environment.
If I can interject, only because in this case, Councilmember Braithwaite's counting even your responses against my time. Apologies for that. So if I were to disagree with an opinion of the law department, right, because this covers you as well.
Yes.
Right, as a covered person. So this isn't just applying to council members, this is applying to staff. So if I believe that you exercise your authority as corporation counsel, whether it's real or perceived, I just perceive that you have exercised your authority in a way to intimidate, coerce, or otherwise interfere with the normal operations. And again, normal operations is seemingly the legislative process is also a part of the normal operations of the city. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I don't necessarily think that would be part of the normal operation of the city, but
what we do up here is not a part of the normal operation.
And so, Councilmember Reed, I just want to make it clear that this part is already in the code, and it's not a part of the amendment. So if you want to ask specifically for the amendment, it's what she emailed, which is or with the well-being of the residents. So I just want to be mindful of your time, that I'll count it towards the amendment or the actual ordinance. This conversation in question has nothing to do with the amendment. And I'll be mindful that there are 2 minutes left, so it's your time.
Fair. If we're only discussing the amendment, then I'll cede my time and wait until I can discuss the main motion.
I thought you would. Are there any other, Councilmember Burns, specifically to the amendment or the or with the well-being of residents? is
No, I
what
was
you
going to make
suggest?
another amendment, so, and I don't know what order to do that in, so I'll
Can
wait.
you hold that?
Yeah,
Because
I'll
I
hold
have
off.
two more lights, and then we'll keep moving, followed by Wynn and Mayor Biss. I don't see Wynn, Mayor Biss.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I really, really appreciate what Councilmember Kelly is trying to do here, and I also I feel like the language is a little broad. Like, so if just reading the relevant part, taking out the extraneous words, exercises authority to interfere with the well-being of residents such that the behavior creates a hostile environment. I'm imagining a situation where a resident doesn't like the leaf blower ban and then just finds the enforcement of it to create a hostile environment. Is it legitimate to then file a complaint against a council member who voted for the ban because they exercised their authority, to interfere with the well-being of that resident who disagrees with the policy, and the resident felt there was a hostile environment? So I'm pretty concerned about the exact words here, but I think the intent is not just good but important. So I'm going to move that we table this to the next meeting of the Rules Committee, which will give us, and I'm happy to participate, Councilmember Kelly, if you want, or not if you don't, but will give us time to find the right formulation of what I think is really an important idea, but that I worry hasn't been captured in a way that I'm comfortable with in this version. So I move that we table this item until the next meeting of the Rules Committee.
I'll second that. And may I
So
second that? And I
just as a
like to
point of
say-
order, we have an amendment from Councilmember Kelly, and then we have the larger.
Well, hold on,
His
I'm
motion
sorry.
to table,
So if
his motion to
we're-
table supersedes that. Point of order.
I'd like
So-
to second tabling this because I do agree with Mayor Biss, and I
Can
would
you-
like to collaborate with Mayor Biss. I think this wording is very important. We do want to get it right, but I will also say the word hostile is also very vague. Like anything, just to your point, Mayor Biss, I do think, anybody can call anything hostile, from the workplace to, so that in itself is very broad. So if someone says the leaf blower, we don't like not being able to use our leaf blowers is hostile, just like anything, it's going to need then to be determined whether it's appropriate or not. But yes, I agree. Whatever it takes to get the residents, that component in here, that's who we serve. I would like to see this tabled so the wording can be, so everybody feels, amenable to the wording. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kelly. Can you then withdraw your motion, and then if there are enough people agreeing, we can either table or we can move it towards a vote? So I'm looking for.
Mr. Chair,
not
I'll just say
just
a motion to
being-
table supersedes her motion. and so
Again, I'm
she
just
doesn't have to
looking
withdraw.
for
Mr.
nods,
Chair.
people wanting some more time to look at this, and if we're good with that, then we'll go ahead and move forward with.
You can address the motion to table because the motion for the amendment was never seconded.
I thought it was seconded. Oh, thank you for keeping track.
Yes.
All right, we will now entertain the motion to table, and it was moved by Mayor Biss, seconded by, all right. Is there a date? Date certain?
The next
Just
meeting of
till
the Rules
next
Committee.
Rules meeting in a month. All right, we'll entertain this at the next Rules meeting. Next up, we
You
have
have to vote on it.
tabled.
You have to vote on a tabling.
Vote on a table? We'll vote on the table.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn. Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Mayor Biss.
All right, this is tabled to our next Rules Committee. Next up, we have R6. I'd like to move, it's the Finance Budget Committee's chair schedule. The Rules Committee shall determine a chair schedule for the Finance and Budget Committee.
So moved.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any discussion?
Yes. So I sent everyone an email with a
What did I miss? I saw, and then,
and yeah, as the maker of the motion always gets to speak first. Yeah, just for clarification for Alderman. Anyhow, I sent to everyone much earlier, hours and hours ago, an amendment regarding this item, and so I now move that. I think that falls in line with what we've been doing for other committees, and so I move that to address this issue.
I'm not sure what time.
Oh,
it
yes,
is.
I will state it. Give me 1 second to pull up the language.
12:15.
Thank you, Councilmember Revelle. Sent to Rules Committee. The chair, I'm sorry, the amendment would amend 562 and say that the chairperson for committees consisting of council members and citizens which report directly to the council shall have a council member as chair. The chairperson shall rotate in order of seniority and elective service. Where seniority is equivalent, the chair shall be chosen in chronological order by ward. A council member shall not chair more than 3 non-standing committees simultaneously. The 3 non-standing committees simultaneously is different, and that is something new, but the way that we are rotating chair schedules on standing committees follows this order, only that with standing committees, of course, our rule says you may only chair 1 standing committee at any given time. And so this just falls in line with what we are already doing. And this is how the committee schedule rotates for economic development, which is also a committee that falls into the rules under 560.
Did anyone else want to speak to this amendment?
I just have a point of clarification. So I understand you said shall be chosen in chronological order?
May have used the wrong term in order. So once we get to where folks have served for the same amount of time, then it goes just in order of ward. So
Numerical
first ward,
order.
Yeah, yes, not chronological, numerical. Thank you.
Is that how it's done on the Economic Committee?
That is how it's done on economic development.
And this is very similar, right? In that it's a mixture of,
It's the same kind of committee, yes.
okay, so that makes sense. Yeah.
So I move that with the change that instead of chronological, I mean numerical.
Does that,
Before we move, Councilmember Revelle, were you going to speak to this motion as well? Okay. Seeing no further lights for discussion, we'll call a roll call, excuse me, on the amendment.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Revelle.
No.
Councilmember Sufferton.
No.
Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Nusma.
No.
Councilmember Wynn. No. Councilmember Braithwaite.
No.
Councilmember Kelly.
aye,
Mayor Biss. No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 noes.
6 noes, the amendment fails. Next, I'd like to recognize Mayor Biss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have been thinking about this issue because I think this is a really important committee that we've created, and frankly, it has a lot of work to do. As we've been the referrals committee, we've been sending it a lot of stuff, and I think that the committee has done important work in the first year, without question, or the first 9 months, I guess. But I think this is an area where real kind of professional subject matter expertise is really critical. And so what I would propose is that we create a situation where a resident member who has a professional background in the field could be the chair. Now, I recognize that that is in conflict with the clause in Rule 5.6.2 that says that a committee of this form shall have a council member as chair. And so what I would like to do is to make a motion for the purposes of making our current appointment to the Finance and Budget Committee, suspend the part of Rule 5.6.2 that obligates the chair of this committee to be a council member. Should that be seconded and passed, then I will make a motion to appoint David Livingston to be the chair, as someone who has tremendous professional experience in this field and has indicated a willingness to really dig in and give a lot of additional time to make this committee be as successful as it can be.
Thank you very much. I understand. 1 second. Are you good? As that amendment's been properly moved and seconded, Corporation Counsel, all good?
Yes.
We can move forward? Okay. There is an amendment on the floor.
It's a motion to suspend the rules.
Pardon me, a motion to suspend the rules to make that amendment.
Point of order.
We have has it been seconded? And it's been seconded. Did you want to speak to the motion?
Yeah, but specifically, my point of order is regarding the suspension of the rules. The suspension of the rules seems to be for a meeting. You don't just suspend a rule indefinitely, you change the rule. So I think the motion to suspend the rule in order to create this new system is out of order. I think changing the rule is in order, but suspending a rule at a single meeting to make a parliamentary change does not seem in order.
So
I'm seeking clarification from Corporation Counsel on.
So my question then to the Rules Committee and Mayor Biss is, my understanding from hearing him talk about this is that the proposal would be to name David Livingston as the next chair, but I did not hear a discussion, and I apologize, I had to step out, about future chairs. And so if the goal is to identify a schedule with future chairs, then Councilmember Reed's point is well taken to amend the rule. But if we're only going to name the person tonight, suspension of the rules the one time does make sense.
I heard you wanting to change the rule, and when the rule is changed, then he would. That's what I heard, and that's why I moved it forward. So I'll give you an opportunity to clarify that, correct?
No, I mean, I think, so I do believe that we have a responsibility to name a chair tonight. I mean, we appointed Councilmember Nguyen for 6 months, more than 6 months ago. And so here we are. I think we've got to appoint a chair. I'm proposing to, for the purposes of that responsibility, suspend this rule and go and do it. Now, I'm very comfortable also amending the rule. I don't think we need to have this council member requirement in there going forward either. But I'm just trying to solve the problem facing us tonight, which is how to get somebody with the necessary professional experience in that role, given what the rules say at this moment.
Okay. So given the fact.
May I ask a question? Sorry. How about, I don't have any issue with having our finance experts, resident finance experts sharing, but I do think, for the sake of a well-functioning committee that is so important that can we rotate our resident chairs? I think that's really important to have different voices and different leadership, and I think we have 3 really, outstanding experts on our committee. So I would just ask that. Can I amend your proposal?
I would defer to the Corporation Counsel. I guess I'm a little concerned, I think, to the kind of back and forth about rule suspension. I'm not sure.
That's a totally different issue.
I guess I would just
think
defer
that's
to
something that we typically do
If the Rules Committee is prepared tonight to solve this issue permanently, meaning set a schedule of rotating chairs, then changing the rule makes sense.
Okay.
If the Rules Committee is not prepared tonight and they're only going to appoint the next chair, suspending the rules makes the most sense. And then we can discuss later on August 1st, a future schedule with rotating chairs, whether they be residents, council members, et cetera. And we can also talk about changing the rules then. The advice that I would provide to the Rules Committee is that we actually amend the ordinance that created this committee. But that can be done later. But if the question is for tonight to name a chair, to Mayor Biss's point, suspension of the rules is proper.
Point of information again, but when and I'm fine with this change, but every meeting that David Livingston was chair of that committee, if we named him, he'd be violating the rule. So it's not a suspension of the rule to name him chair. The rule says that the chair shall be a council member for these kinds of committees. So he would be violating the rule on an ongoing basis, thereby the idea that we're just suspending the rule to name them, there's no rule saying, all right, well, Council Cummings, if...
I would respectfully disagree. The rule requires that the Rules Committee appoint the council member as chair, and so if the rule is suspended, that appointment power is no longer limited to a council member. It can be to someone else.
It doesn't say appoint. It says shall have a council member as chair.
Appointed by the Rules Committee.
Yeah, but shall have.
So we're just going to throw out the rest of the rule and.
Yeah, fine, but it says shall have a council member as
I'm
chair.
going to go ahead and bring us back to where we are with the amendment. Mayor Biss, can you just please restate the amendment? Corporation Counsel, if you give a nod, then that'll be the amendment that we vote on. Again, it's now, I can barely, quarter to
Yes,
7,
it's-
we have 2 discussion
Yeah,
items.
it's not an amendment, it's a motion to suspend the portion of Rule 5.6.2 that obligates this chair to be a council member.
Thank you. And is there a second for that? Second. It's been properly moved and seconded. Dar, do you mind calling the roll?
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
On suspending the rules, no.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Sefferden.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn.
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Mayor Biss.
All right. I think that motion carries.
Yeah, 1 no.
With what? Yep. Next, we have, we would then, do you want to vote on? So go ahead, make your motion.
So I move that we appoint David Livingston to be the chair of the Finance and Budget Committee.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. With one light, recognized
So
Councilmember Burns.
what is the period?
I think it should be 6 months currently, and then we revisit again in 6 months. That was my understanding when I voted to override.
My instinct is 1 year. I think we learn, we're here sort of over time because 6 months was, we sort of blew that deadline. So I apologize for not including that. It's a good flag. So my motion will be for a year if folks want to amend that. That's obviously their right, but I'm going to propose a year for this term.
So it's currently, to answer that question, a year. Is everyone willing to accept that? Is it a friendly? And then we can vote on the motion.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was unclear when we voted to override the rules. I understood that we were voting to override so that a resident, instead of a council member, would fulfill that role.
You
So
are
I didn't know
correct.
it was possible.
You are correct. We voted on that and it passed 8-1. 9, pardon me, 9 to
Right, but
1.
my understanding was that it was, changing the 6-month rotation from a council member to a,
No. Did you want to
resident.
clarify something, Mayor
The
Biss?
6-month rotation was not a rotation. It was just the initial term was set at 6 months on an ad hoc basis last time. And on a similarly ad hoc basis, I'm proposing a year. If someone wants to move to amend that, we can vote on such a motion.
So to the motion of moving to a year, I asked for a friendly. I saw enough nods, and it looks like we have enough to pass it. So in an interest of time, seeing no lights, we'll go ahead and call the motion. Dar, please.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Sefferden.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn. Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
aye.
Mayor Biss.
All right. That passes. Seeing no other issues, we have 2 items for discussion. Item D1 is discussion of alternative forms of government for the city of Evanston. This was one of my recommendations, just to flush out a conversation that I think we have had just since the beginning of the election that has taken a lot of different conversations. I will leave it in the hands of Corporation Counsel just to frame the discussion. And I want to be really mindful of our time because, again, we have a very long Human Services meeting ahead of us. Corporation Counsel.
Just point of information, has this gone through the referrals committee?
This was placed on the agenda by the chair.
Thank you.
But has it gone through the, because our rules say that no policy change shall appear on a standing committee agenda.
No need to respond. We'll just, if you could just frame it, please.
Well, it's a
Thank you.
discussion of a policy change. So we're saying that discussions of policy changes can appear on agendas without going through the referrals committee?
They have previously on APW agendas the last few months.
I've been told that they can't.
Thank you,
Can
Corporation
someone
Counsel.
provide
Whenever
some-
you're.
Okay.
Thank you.
So very briefly, I'll try and keep this discussion as short as possible. I know that there are members of the public that are here interested in this item. The first thing I will say is that the Illinois Constitution allows for home rule forms of government like Evanston to, by referendum, determine how its form of government, but it can only choose the form of government that's provided for under Illinois law. And there are four options. The first is the council-mayor form of government, which is the quote-unquote default form of government in Illinois. There is the commission form, the council-manager form, and the strong mayor form. And those are outlined in the memo. The council-mayor form of government is akin to the city of like Chicago, our neighbor to the south. It's often perceived that Chicago is a strong mayor form of government. It's actually not true. By its charter, Chicago is a council-mayor form of government, wherein the city council has the authority to determine the powers that are exercised by the mayor, various commissioners, city employees, et cetera, et cetera. The commission form of government is governed by a council consisting of the mayor and 4 commissioners. The council in a commission form of government retains all executive, administrative, and legislative authority. So all of that power resides in the 5 people elected to a commission. And then and there are 5 departments that are sort of divided by those council members, the commissioners, and they can appoint superintendents, and there are various different powers and authority that is outlined in the memo as far as the commission is concerned. The city of Evanston is governed by the council manager form, as we're all aware. Under this form of government, the city manager is the administrative head of the government, whereas the council is the legislative authority for that form of government. In a strong mayor form of government, the city manager's authority is retained by the mayor. And essentially, if you read the code, which is 65 ILCS 5/6-4-7, it mirrors the code with respect to the city manager in terms of the authority given to the mayor in a strong mayor form of government. Also under strong mayor form of government, as I mentioned earlier this evening, primary elections are required under 6-3-11. It very explicitly says that there shall be a primary to choose 2 people, to choose from 2 people to run for office. The mayor is required to appoint a number of administrative assistants with the qualifications of a city manager to aid the operation of the city. So we would not get away from having a city manager. It would be absolutely necessary. However, the power of the city manager will be limited, and that person would only answer to the mayor. And then I outline in the memo the steps to abandon our current form of government. In order to do that, it has to be done by referendum. And I will also note that, we are representative democracy. So regardless of, there were some comments about how there's lack of accountability to the residents. The residents elect you all to make these particular decisions in terms of who the city manager is, what ordinances to pass, what resolutions to pass. If there's going to be a resolution to actually authorize this referendum, all of that is done by the members of city council, which are elected by the public body. And I also outlined in the memo the actual referendum that is required in order to abandon the city manager form of government. And it poses the question, shall the city of Evanston retain the managerial form of government? And all of the steps are outlined there in terms of how that would work out.
I appreciate that, Nick. So before we enter into the conversation, I just want to be clear on a couple of things for those that are tuning in at this moment. This item was placed on the agenda just as a discussion item. I think clearly by some of the comments of the residents, it's something that has come up a number of times, and I don't know how many people read the contract, but I thought it was very interesting, and this was a conversation I had with Councilmember Wynn, that our last city manager somehow had I don't know if it's insight or foresight, but he actually put that in his contract, which I found interesting and confusing at the same time. And so we're not going to solve the issue tonight, but I think for the purpose that we're still looking for a city manager, I thought the timing of it made sense. And clearly this is something that residents have talked about. So with that being said, there are no indications to budget as part of this discussion. It was just what I would call a conversation worth having. And so I want to open it up to discussions, and then I think we can come back at a later date if there is additional action that's needed based on what we hear tonight.
There's certainly some budgetary concerns that would need to be addressed, but I did not research
We didn't have
at
the
this time.
Yeah, we'll see where we land. Councilmember Nguyen has the floor.
Well, I'll just start off by saying that I'm a very strong supporter of the form of government that we currently have. It's one that was established more than 70 years ago at the behest of the League of Women Voters. My memory is correct on all of that information. For cities our size, it makes very good sense to have professional management. We do have a large budget, but a relatively small population in which you would draw someone to run as mayor. I do think that having this form of government where we have a professional manager who's trained really provides us with the highest quality government and we can look at our surrounding communities. I know of several that do not have this form of government, which has a strong mayor form of government. Those are not, in my opinion, well run. I think they're rife with corruption, and that everyone answers to a single person, the mayor. And I recognize that some folks in the community are perhaps unhappy with our decisions, but we're a deliberative body, and we are responsible. This is representative democracy. We're elected to hire a city manager, and I think that we have been effective in being a deliberative democracy. I don't want to move to a strong mayor form of government, and I'll stop there. I have vivid testimony from a very close friend of mine who was the 3rd Ward alderman for the city of Berwyn, which is a strong mayor form of government. And she was a resident of Evanston for 10 years and would be very happy to come and discuss with us what it's like to have a strong mayor form of government. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Jonathan. Oh, Councilmember Newsma. Thank you. I can't see any. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not support changing our system of government. I do support doing a better job with the system that we currently have. If we were to change, I'll enumerate 4 reasons why I am not in favor of changing, kind of in descending order or increasing order of importance. But number 1, if we were to change, that would just create a cloud of uncertainty and confusion and chaos for an indefinite period of time, which would detract our attention from the real work we have to do on any number of issues confronting our community. Affordable housing, our very important equity work, climate action. We have a discussion about the Civic Center. Everything that we should be focusing on would become secondary if we were going to pursue changing our form of government, and I don't think that would be doing the community a service. Number 2, if we changed to a new form of government, we would be opening up a door to any number of other problems that we can't anticipate at this point. There are downsides, there are consequences of any other form of government, and I don't think the grass is greener on the other side of either of those 3 fences. And then number 3, I want to underscore the fact that I do think the community is best served by having professionals who are qualified in their fields of work to be filling the key staff positions, and not to have key staff positions filled by political appointees. I think that would be a step in the wrong direction. And then last but certainly not least, in fact, I would say this is more important, in terms of public engagement and transparency, which are so very important to this community, as many of us hear on a regular basis. If we change to a strong mayor system, there would be less engagement. There would only be one person running the city, and it would diminish the role, diminish the authority of the council members. And we do have, under our current system, a system that allows the public to hold the city council accountable once every 4 years. And it's up to council members to do that work, to engage with the public in a transparent manner. And we can do that job better, but I don't think changing the system of government would improve this in any way.
Thank you, Councilmember Newsma. I want to officially go on the record of saying, no, I do not support a strong mayor. I think this is something that was brought up at an NAACP candidate forum, and it just seemed very out of the blue, and I was surprised by some of the comments from, at the time, candidates. It really doesn't matter now because we're sitting here in place. I think two things. First of all, I really believe it sets us up for failure. And when you add, if I'm reading the code, what you put in the memo, we're going from 9 members of council to then 18 members of council. So I'm assuming that that's going to be in addition to the budget when you look at all of the small amount of money that we make in addition to the health package, et cetera. But then it diminishes our voice on council. So whereas there are 9 opportunities for our residents across the city to be heard and voted on, we now limit it to just one person. And I don't know if this is a hypothetical thought, so I'll just share it. I think the person with the most money and influence wins. And in those situations, as we've seen in other municipalities, the person who wins are the ones with the most money, who raise the most money, and then now you are beholden to whomever your investors are in this role. I don't see where, as I share this with the other members of council that are kind of, maybe I'm going to assume, gathering their thoughts, I don't see how this helps our town with as engaging of a community that we have with all of the diversity to leave it to one voice. I think collectively we recognize and we represent many voices from color, gender, age, ethnicity, affluency, and I don't see how one person has that ability to embody all of Evanston. So those are my comments. Councilmember Reed?
I'm still missing the discussion of alternative forms. I feel like this is just a we all love city manager form, so I'm not sure of the point. But I do want to just state I agree strongly with a statement that you made there, and I saw a lot of heads nodding when you made it, which is that your concern is that particularly in a, people keep saying strong mayor, but Nick pretty clearly said the kind of government we're usually talking about when we're thinking about strong mayors, what Chicago has, which is council, mayor or the mayor council form of government, 2 different things. And in fact, that actually may give the council more power, but I'll leave that. The thing you said is that the person with the most money and influence wins the mayor's race. And I agree with that, and I think a lot of us here agree with that and would say that that is the #1 problem in our democracy. And I'm seeing a head nod from, I want to acknowledge that from Alderman Nguyen, a head nod there too, and I saw a head nod from Alderman Newsma. I don't have eyes in the back of my head, but maybe Alderman, Councilmember Carrie Karras, and maybe Councilmember Ravel also nodded. But if that is the biggest problem in our democracy, and we think that our elections go to the people who have the most money, then maybe that's something we should really be addressing, and maybe that should be at the top order of something we're addressing, particularly as we're considering proposals like ranked choice voting and other amendments. If we all say that that's the #1 issue, let's get to the heart of it. I have no comments on this item.
Anyone else, Harry Cars, have anything to say on the issue? Alderman Ravel, do you have anything that you'd like to share with your residents on this issue?
Just as a very long-time member of the League of Women Voters, I've been a strong supporter of our form of government for years and years, and I see no reason to change.
Thank you. Councilmember Burns, did you have any comments on this issue?
Just to council comments, if you could reiterate, this in rank, if we were to implement a strong mayor form of government, we could not do that and ranked choice voting.
That's the way I read the code. However, there was that 1974 Supreme Court case that I mentioned earlier that talked about a referendum. The referendum has the ability to override the municipal code. So because I'm not even clear if we can actually print ballots for ranked choice voting at this point, I would say that my advice would be that we would have to have a primary if we went to a strong mayor form of government.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Newsma?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that in my previous comments, I was not referring to our current mayor or any previous mayor, for that matter. My comments are intended only on the system of government with no respect to any of the individuals that may or may not be involved now or in the future.
Yeah.
I just had one question, if I could, for I think Councilmember Newsma. Can you just explain to me, I'm open to hearing, I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, but can you explain why you think, another form of government would preclude having a qualified city manager? Because you said it wouldn't allow us to have us, I didn't understand that.
It wouldn't automatically preclude us from having a strong mayor appoint fully qualified staff, but it would open the door for a mayor to make political appointments of unqualified individuals to very important key roles within the city staff.
Just point of information, Council Cummings, we have civil service laws in Illinois, and civil service laws require that people are qualified for the positions that they hold. Is that correct?
Those civil service laws apply to fire and police.
So the civil service laws don't apply to any other employees other than fire and police?
Not as I read them. Specifically under the municipal code, it talks about the fire and police, the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners and selection process of civil service employees. Generally speaking, the municipal code, when it talks about civil service employees, is talking about police and fire.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think just Councilmember Kelly, I wanted to, share my analogy, obviously as an employee of District 202, and I don't know how long you have been teaching. I said this is just my thought process. It makes as much sense to vote in someone who's a strong mayor as it makes sense to vote in a superintendent. I think that comes up where I'm now feeding into the next question, which is talking about the roles of council members, and I'll have some direction there. But I think did you want to say something?
Yeah, just one thing came into mind also.
Sure.
Good evening, Kelly Gandersky, interim city manager. One thing it struck me in looking at a different form of government, because you'd have the election cycle every 4 years, and it would open up to that key figurehead who makes the appointments for top city staff to change. What other municipalities do to prevent a disruption of city services then is appoint a bunch of deputy commissioners or deputy directors, assistant directors. So budgetarily speaking, I'm not sure that we even have the budget to handle it without raising taxes substantially, because you would need to ensure that every 4 years, once those political appointees go away, or maybe go away, that you've got solid staff that's able to continue running the operations. So just something to consider.
Point of information, wouldn't the body still have to approve the funding for those staff that you just spoke about? Like the mayor wouldn't just have carte blanche ability to increase the budget and spend it.
No, I didn't mean that the mayor or the mayor council form of government would have carte blanche authority. That would have to be something that would be proposed and voted in the budget. But it's something to consider because, for instance, if all the directors here were political appointees, at the end of 4 years, the administration changes, then typically those top tier senior staff go with that administration change. So you have to have someone under that director position or commissioner position that understands how to run the department.
Okay. So as we wrap up this discussion item, I don't think there's any further action for our staff to take on this issue, and I just want to note, starting with myself, Councilmember Nguyen, Councilmember Nusma, Councilmember Burns. We also heard from Councilmember Ravel. We did not hear from Councilmember Herrikaras on this issue, that we're all firm in support of our current form of government. And I think that that's important, that I want to signal to our residents as well as signal to any other person as we're currently searching for a city manager. I started the conversation by saying that our last candidate put that in his contract, and I'm not really clear where that came from, but the fact that he did that, I think, is something that we all need to be mindful of. And I do appreciate your comments, Councilmember Nusma, in terms of clarification, as well as our current city manager. Just allow the notes to reflect that Mayor Biss was not present for this conversation, as well as Councilmember Sufford, and Mayor Biss had a...
Councilmember Braithwaite, could you just reiterate again, you put this on the agenda, what the purpose was? I'm a little confused, because it certainly wasn't a comprehensive discussion. I mean, what was your point?
I shared that 2 or 3 times. Do you want me to say it again?
Yeah.
Okay. I shared that this has been a conversation that started during our election cycle. I shared that it started at a NAACP forum, and I'm sure I can find that so you can hear for yourself.
I want to get to the point of it.
Okay, so that's point number 1. I also shared that there have been conversations within our residents, and you heard that clearly during public comment. And then my third reason for bringing it up, I was very surprised by the fact that our former candidate for city manager thought that he needed to put that in his contract. So the purpose then of putting kind of a very lightweight discussion of this tonight is to, I mean, I'm not really seeing, I'm still not seeing, I understand the chronology of events that happened in the past, but I'm still not understanding what your goal is in having this on the agenda tonight. Like I don't understand. I don't see a purpose. That's fine.
There are many things. This really wasn't a comprehensive discussion. I mean, this was, what are we?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next item that we have is, and again, being mindful of time, we have a very long, robust communities, human services meeting, is discussion on the role of city council and council members for managerial form of municipal government. I think that, again, this is something that I've discussed and I've heard from residents in terms of, I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to this. What do we actually do? What do we do as council members? And there's so many different ideas in terms of, do we have a staff? And when I'm called, I tell them that you're speaking to the staff and I'm in my office in my car. And so I don't think that we're going to unpack it, but the invitation to council members is, we don't necessarily have any clear criteria in terms of, and not requesting that we need to, but there's no clear criteria in terms of what our roles is that's stated publicly for someone who's running. There are no requirements for education, not that I'm suggesting that either, but I would think as we're moving to align what we do to our staff just in terms of expectations and other employee, what's the word I'm looking for in terms of the employee, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think we all could have many comments on this, but I think fundamentally it's in the first sentence here of the second paragraph, which is the powers of the council or board shall be purely legislative.
Yes.
So there are many people, I many times have picked up my phone and had someone say, I'd like to have your staff. Could you have someone on your staff?
Yeah.
So, it's just a matter of educating people that I am the staff.
Yeah.
And our role is legislative.
Yeah.
We're the policymakers. And that's what I've explained to the community as well. And I think, I also many times explain, I'm one of 9, And so, and you can convince me, but we need to convince others as well. So just like any other legislative body, it's a collaborative, deliberative body that works for the good of the community. And, you know, we can have a long philosophical discussion about that.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we have time for that.
No, I don't. And what I was hoping, Councilmember Kelly, if you're listening, as a goal to come out of this discussion item, I often share the same thing, with the top being responding to my residents, supervising the city manager, legislative responsibilities, and we vote on a budget, to just put that in a very brief framework that can be later built on at a later point. Councilmember Reed?
Yeah, I just, we're wrapping up, but I just wanted to highlight that, you know, the role of a council member is, I think was just said, just purely legislative. And that means that also that the role of staff is not legislative. So I think making sure that we're creating clear distinctions between what is a legislative role and what is not a legislative role, both ways will be healthy for this form of government.
I would love if, and I'm just going to make a suggestion, maybe Councilmember Nguyen is the longest standing city council member, and Councilmember Newsmoke, who also tends to look at things very, you kind of have a consultative way of looking at things in a fresh set of eyes, to maybe take lead on drafting some real simple bullet points that at a much later date we can come back and have a more robust discussion if needed. But for my residents, I often have to field the question, and it would be great to either have a document or a website that at least just frames the fact that people understand that we're not full-time. Many of us work and have other responsibilities outside of our council, responsibilities.
And then we don't have that magic wand.
And we don't have that magic wand. That's.
I like that idea. We do have residents in the Fourth Ward, and maybe others have heard the discussion, lamenting the fact that there is no job description for an alderman, or a council member. I think that's what you're asking for.
That is
us to
exactly
draft
what I'm
something
asking for.
And I will add that our role is really not just legislative, not just setting policy. First and foremost, that's what we're here for. But Councilmember Braithwaite, you also mentioned constituent services.
Yeah.
You, I think, alluded to our role that we play in community engagement and communications. We also represent our community in other forums.
Yeah.
For example, I had a call today from somebody who has a problem with airplane routes over the neighborhood. And that's not something the city council has anything to do with, but I'll be happy to call the FAA.
Yeah.
Or ask staff to do that.
As we wrap up, I see a light from Councilmember Burns, who hasn't spoken. And one of the things that I would also ask you to include on the list, what we don't do, what we're not. I think that's just as important. Thank you. Councilmember Burns, you have the last comment.
I was just going to say, I think it's up to each council member to decide, what they do above and beyond their legislative responsibility, what I will say is I think more closely tied to our core work is we're elected from districts. And so I think what that also says is that your legislative agenda should work to the benefit of that district, which would really imply that some type of organizing has to happen. Like you need some form of, you need a mechanism both to do outreach but also to get feedback. And so I just wanted to put that in mind. I think that, or we just be at large, elected from at large, and we're not. We're elected for districts, I think, for a reason. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Reed, did you want to close us out in this discussion and adjourn the meeting?
Yeah, thank you. And again, when I said the role is purely legislative, I'm just going by what's black and white in the law. And yes, there are plenty of things that we do above and beyond that, and that's political, and that's how we get elected, and that's how we make favors for residents. But legally, the black and white responsibility is purely legislative.
Okay. Corbett, thank you so much for leading us in the last two discussion items. Seeing no additional items in front of us, I'm going to entertain a motion. I would like to set that we start our Human Services meeting in 5 minutes. Everyone good with that? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All those in favor? Aye. Our meeting stands adjourned. Thank you very much.